Okay, so Star Wars is currently still in the middle of this civil war. And that civil war started on December 15th, 2017, when we got to see The Last Jedi, and our expectations were subverted straight to the damn dumpster in many cases, because a lot of people were not happy with what we saw. So much so that the aforementioned trilogy of films that Ryan Johnson had been given by Kathleen Kennedy, who basically was standing for him in regards to all that, was now called into question. Would this civil war over Star Wars fandoms ultimately tank this particular trilogy? A lot of people at the time, back in at the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, thought, no, 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 it's fine. It's not going to happen. But then Solo came, and then Solo went. And then Bob Iger said, I take full responsibility for the state of affairs of Star Wars. I pushed out two new movies too quick. This is all my bad. This is all my fault. And then it started to kind of just, slip away. Things were basically at that point in time starting to go stagnant. The only thing they talked about post J.J. Abrams episode 8 or episode 9 is, well, D.B. Weiss and David Benioff from Game of Thrones doing their thing. That, of course, is exactly where we find ourselves right now. It's the only thing that's been talked about from a corporate level, at least a higher up level. Now, recently, it was revealed through, I guess, a bad take that Ryan Johnson had walked away from his Star Wars trilogy, so much so that the guys behind it kind of had to, delete it, apologize, turn tail, and run. And ever since then, again, all quiet on the Western Front. That is until today, where Rian Johnson at CinemaCon said that he was going back to a galaxy far, far away after he finished Knives Out. Now, the reason why he's talking about that is because obviously he was going to get a lot of questions about it from people at CinemaCon, which makes a lot of sense. And two, I think he likes to kind of stick the knife in a little bit and twist it every once in a while. He likes to kick the beehive because, he knows his movies are like years away from coming out, like light years away from coming out. Because at this point in time, there's a whole slate of movies coming out post episode 9 that we don't know about. And his haven't been mentioned in nearly a year and a half. So I find that a little bit hard to believe that he's still ultimately working on it. Now, what I would think is going to happen is he's probably still going to do it, but I think he might have some more oversight. And here's the reason why I say that. Well, if he's not bound by being the middle part in a trilogy where he is trying to change things up for some reason in the middle part of a trilogy, he might find himself in a position to tell a better story. But then I go back to Looper, and I think about Looper as being an original story, and it sucked. The story was terrible. It was god-awful. The story in The Last Jedi was terrible. It was god-awful. Both films, however, were directed well. So what I think should be happening here, and what I'm hoping happens here, is that Kathleen Kennedy, who clearly is standing for him still and protecting him still, comes out and says, listen, we're going to put a producer on you. We're going to give you a creative that's going to stick with you. You get to kind of framework the story, but they're going to be able to kind of put it together. They're going to build the Frankenstein monster and, you get to bring it to life. And I think that could possibly work out because some of the better episodes that Rian Johnson directed of Breaking Bad were very story heavy episodes, but he's not the one who was in charge of the story. He was just in charge of directing pages from somebody else's script that Vince Gilligan had overseen. And if they can find a way to oversee him in regards to that, it could be okay. I think if they find a person to come on in and act as an actual producer from Lucasfilm with the overall story arc in mind and crafting a good tale, we might be able to get this whole ship turned around. And I think another reason why they're waiting until after Knives Out to say anything, which I think comes out this year sometime, what they're effectively trying to do is they're playing up the old Hollywood adage. Oh, you're only as good as your last movie, right? You're only as good as your last picture, they say. And his last picture was shit. So if his last picture was bad and he's got a new movie coming out, they're hoping that this new movie does well. And I actually kind of think his trilogy at Star Wars kind of relies on whether or not Knives Out is able to be a success. The thing, though, is when it comes to Knives Out, he's got a bit of a stacked deck. There's a lot of players involved in that movie. Daniel Craig, Jamie Lee Curtis, Ana de Armas. There are a lot of people that are playing in that field with him. He's got a star-studded cast. And when you have that star-studded of a cast, it's going to be kind of difficult in order to lose. You should be able to pull in some decent money just based upon the casting and word of mouth alone. And I think a lot of people are going to show up to see whether or not he screws that movie up too. I think that's going to be a big point of it. People are going to watch it to see whether or not he subverted expectations on a wholly original story. So we'll have to wait and see what's happening with it all right now. But this is currently where things are at. I don't think we're going to get anything about this trilogy, even at Celebration next week. Maybe we will. Maybe we will. Maybe they're gonna sit there and throw caution to the wind and announce the new slate. But I don't think they will. I think they're going to want to focus specifically on the Mandalorian, specifically on Episode 9, specifically on Resistance, specifically on Galaxy's Edge, and that's where they're going to want to focus their time. They're not going to want to mire the entire convention with any kind of controversy. And if they announce Rian Johnson is going to be directing these movies and giving it any information at that point in time, it's only going to cause a lot of controversy. Instead, because Bob Iger has only talked about the Game of Thrones guys coming in to do it, and Game of Thrones is going into its final season next weekend, I think that's going to be the larger story because that's going to get more ink considering the popularity of Game of Thrones. That's my take on it right there. As far as, so from right now, Rian Johnson says he's still working on it, but it's been 17 months. Nothing really official has come out. Celebration is next week. If they don't say anything at Celebration next week, they clearly are going to wait until after Knives Out or after the release of Episode 9 for all that dust to settle and to not screw up the release of this movie, which could have grander impact for the franchise as a whole. The Last Jedi fundamentally hurt Star Wars. It hurt Star Wars. There's no question about it. Solo was hurt because of The Last Jedi. It absolutely was. And now we're in a position where we're going to see what might be happening. Now, my question though is, and this is something I'm kind of curious about, is Rian Johnson, whose only real success narratively speaking was on Breaking Bad that he didn't write, would he be considering taking his particular trilogy and moving it into a 3-season show for Disney Plus? Because remember, Disney Plus is wanting to focus a lot of content from Star Wars on that side of things. They want to focus on the TV side of things. And maybe giving him the opportunity to work in television would be a little bit better than blowing all that money on a theatrical release. These are things I'm curious to know about. Either way, it's going to be very fascinating when news finally breaks, if it ever really does. But I leave it to you, your thoughts, your opinions. Let me know down in the comments below. I'll talk to you guys later. Have yourself